Number 10. Long neck. Look, this one probably isn't a surprise to anyone. There must be like 20 documentaries on the subject alone, but today we're talking about the long-necked women found in some African cultures. In a nutshell, you pile on gold rings around your wife's neck until she's impersonating a totally winnable ring toss game at the county fair. The end result is a neck that's long just as the day is long. Pretty long. And in these cultures, this is considered very beautiful. Now, who am I to judge? I can't. However, as a lawyer, doctor, detective, and fireman here at Bumblebee, I'm gonna not recommend the giraffe look. While at first glance it may look like the neck is being stretched, it's really the shoulders that are being dropped forcibly by having so many rings piled up on your neck. That's not healthy for you. Anyone in the comment section that has played contact sport will tell you that dropping your shoulders like that is not good. I like my thick neck the way it is, thank you very much.
Number 9. Lead cosmetics. Did anyone know we still sort of do this today? Are we insane? Lead has been used in makeup for an extremely long time. It was found in cosmetics back in classical antiquity, so that's as far back as the 8th century BC. In the 18th century though, women would mix lead with vinegar to make themselves look more and more pale, which was a beauty standard back in the day. Gotta love looking like you never see the sun. Now, while the white lead that was used wasn't easily absorbed through the skin, the mixture of white lead with other chemicals and ingredients to create makeup and other products did indeed cause lead poisoning. And even though people knew this, they continued to keep on using it?
Number 8. Jiggle machines. Oh, the great effort people will go to not make any effort. The self-exercisers or vibration machines were a popular fad back in the 1950s and 60s. The idea? Lose weight fast and easy with the help of modern science and machines. Trouble is, they don't really work. At all. In a way, it's pretty similar to the snake oil men of the past. A common issue, a weird solution, and then a great marketing, well, that would make for a fad. Someone had to just make bank on it, I know they did. I mean, I get the appeal. I do. I wish I could be a 1950s housewife with a vibration machine, so I could be beach ready. But being a 1950s housewife means I'm so busy. But with a belt machine, it means I can keep my hands free, so I can reach for my favorite brand of menthol cigarettes and my third morning martini. Boy, I sure love this modern world. Wow.
Number 7. Ear scoops. When I think of all the things I use a scoop for, I think of ice cream and sugar for my tea. Well, now I'm going to be thinking about how people in the Viking era, all the way to the later post-Tudor times, used to scoop out their own earwax. Yes, an ear scoop was a tiny little brass or copper spoon with a twisted handle that went to a point. The spoon part was used for scooping, while the pointed end was used for pooping. No, I just wanted to say that. It was actually used for cleaning the fingernails of dirt. Thanks, ear scoops. Now I'm never going to look at a spoon the same way again.
Number 6. Hangover Mask. Okay, picture this. It's 1946. WW2 is over. Life's getting back to normal. You live in a major city, so you decide to take a night on the town with your friends. Well, one too many Manhattans later and, well, you're not even sure if you're still on the island of Manhattan. You have what the drinkers of the world call a hangover. Let me know in the comments without too much grim detail about your worst hangover. What was your poison of choice? I'm curious. Many men and ladies have found themselves in bad places in the morning after so many drinks, only if there was something to cure said hangover. Well, ladies, you're in luck. The Hangover Mask aims to cure that. It's basically just a mask with plastic ice cubes. However, I'm gonna get a little personal and say that every hangover I've ever had, I didn't need a face mask. I needed some water. And a bucket since the bathroom was too far away. I don't know why would your face need to be cold? I don't really understand that part. I don't know.
Number 5. Tooth removal. Here, I found this quote from a dentist in the medieval period who would travel from town to town. Take some newts, buy some cold lizards, and those nasty beetles which are found in fens during the summertime. Calcine them in an iron pot and make a powder thereof. Wet the forefinger of the right hand, insert it in the powder, and apply to the tooth frequently, refraining from spitting it off. When the tooth will fall away without pain, it is proven. Hey, if it is proven, who am I to say otherwise? Just some lowly YouTube host. If you weren't using your Newton beetle powder to remove your tooth, then it looks like you're going the much more old-fashioned tooth-pulling route. And that was much, much worse. They had rudimentary anesthetics that was possibly used then, but you had to worry about bleeding and infection. I think I'll stick with my beetle newt powder.
Number 4. Rejuvenique Mask. I got another mask for you guys. I know, but I saw this and I just didn't know what to think, honestly. It's a mask that you wear, but it's plugged into a battery pack and it sends pulsations to your face. After, of course, you've applied the toning gel. What the heck is toning gel? I don't know. This is supposed to tone your face, apparently. Your jawline, or I just feel like plunging your face into a mask that's hooked up to a voltage, that's just a bad idea. Oh yeah, and also a bad idea is the mask itself. Look at this thing. I mean, that's a heinous looking mask right there. You can come home from school one day and your mom's gonna be sitting at the kitchen table looking up Michael Myers. Oh, that's not okay. Please don't do horror movie beauty stuff, ladies. Please, no. I don't want to be scared. I don't like scary stuff.
Number 3, Spit Black. Back in the roaring 20s, they had mascara, just like we do now. But unlike the little tubes of stuff we have, they had a block or cake of the stuff. To get it to a state where they could actually apply it to their lashes, they would need to add water. And what's the quickest form of water? That's right, it's just spit. The mascara cake stuff was made of soap and coloring, which you don't really want to put near your eyes. But then, knowing that people are using their spit to apply it, it's your own spit, so I guess if you're comfortable with that, you do you, pal, but makes me think of dudes using their saliva to like lick their eyebrows. Ick.
Number 2, sharp teeth. I like Shark Boy and Lava Girl just as much as the next guy. However, that doesn't mean I want to look and feel like a shark. This one just creeps me out. I don't hate the dentist, but I think everyone can agree with me that teeth getting drilled is just uncomfortable. It just kind of sucks. Especially if there's like powdered tooth in your mouth. That's just the worst. It's kind of gross too. I don't know. Well, what I do know, however, is that there are some cultures out there where the ladies get their teeth sharpened or filed. Oh yes, and there ain't no dentist office there either. This is bite the leather, you're in dad's kitchen kind of operation. Oh god. I would honestly talk more about it, but the editor's gonna show some pictures, and I'm gonna have to stop because if I see them, I legit get queasy. I don't want to see that stuff. No thank you, no teeth sharpening. No.
Number 1, Mercury Laced Skin Cream. Secure Gorad's Oriental Cream and take your first step to a new lasting beauty. That's right, over time you too can develop dark rings around your eyes, lose some of those pearly whites, and get stunning black gums. That's because Gorad's Oriental Cream is made with calomel. What is calomel, I hear you ask? It's a mercury compound. Yeah, it doesn't sound so good anymore, does it? While the women of the 1920s who used this product maybe once or twice would be fine, those who used it over long periods of time subjected themselves to mercury poisoning. But hey, Gorad's cream came in white, flesh, and whatever the hell color Rachel is supposed to be.
Alright, so let's start off with Venetian Ceruse. It's easy to recognize even if the name isn't. It's that thick white lead powder biddies used to whack on their face cement thick. Something they've been doing since ancient Roman times. Queen Elizabeth I was known for her iconic white makeup. The Venetian Ceruse made up of white, lead, and vinegar and applied to achieve a pale, smooth complexion that signified wealth. The beauty ideals at the time included bright, wide-set eyes, snow white skin, rosy cheeks and lips, and fair hair. Elizabeth I was known to use ceruse to hide her smallpox scars, and ceruse became so commonly used by many fashionable aristocratic women during the era. Yet, the toxic effects of lead absorbed into the skin didn't go unnoticed in that time either. And it's hard to when your skin becomes grayish and shriveled, and your face hair falls out, and your teeth start eroding away. Not subtle. So, because the makeup ate at the skin needed to be hidden more, with more makeup. In addition to ceruse, the beauty regime also included a face wash with eggshells, alum, mercury, and honey. The mercury also eating away at the skin, and the eggshells causing micro abrasions to make that all the easier. In the 1700s, a famous beauty and aristocrat from Ireland died from lead poisoning due to her use of ceruse, or what was called death by vanity. Maria Coventry, Countess of Coventry. Its name is beautiful and has the same cloying sweetness and smell as its poison. Belladonna, aka Deadly Nightshade. This is the patron flower of one of my closest friends, so girl, this is for you. According to the Big Bad Book of Botany, The World's Most Fascinating Flora by Michael Largo, a drop of belladonna's poisonous extracts were historically used by assassins to kill their targets, and by women to dilate their pupils to look more seductive. The roots are the most potent part of the plant, but even one leaf can be fatal when ingested or exposed to. Yet Italian women who called it belladonna used Deadly Nightshade as an eye drop to dilate their pupils, which supposedly made them more attractive, or at least made them look like an anime character. Naturally, some poison in your eyeball can cause visual distortion and sensitivity to light, and if taken systematically can kill you pretty quickly. In the mood for a snack, how about some toxic dust pressurized into a cracker? Arsenic wafers. It's exactly what they were too, so if you didn't pop into your mouth whole, that thing would have the crumbling power of a Nature Valley granola bar. Sold under the brand name Dr. James P. Campbell's Safe Arsenic wafers, the fact he put the word safe in there, you know, dicey. In the United States and Europe, these were little white chalk wafers that could treat a variety of complexion problems, such as skin tags, moles, freckles, pimples, blemishes, and also advertised to cause pale skin, which was oh so classy. In fact, the consumptive chic, aka dying from deadly disease chic, became an ideal beauty standard during the Victorian era, as victims of tuberculosis would become sickly pale and thin. Rich people saw that on the street and said, oh, I think I might steal that look. However, the way that arsenic worked was by destroying red blood cells, and thanks to the toxicity of arsenic, it could also cause symptoms like damage to the kidney and nervous system, hair loss, and skin lesions called arsenic keratosis. The wafers were marketed as being safe naturally, and while tolerance to arsenic can be built up in small amounts, arsenic is one of the most toxic substances with a median lethal dose of 13 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. To build an immunity would take scientific precision, not snacking on poison crackers you fish out of your purse. Does the sentence dysfunctional hair removing cream raise alarms in you? Because it does in me, and apparently the FDA. It's Creme. Advertised as perfectly safe and somehow permanent way to remove hair, this cream actually poisoned the user instead, like everything else on this list. And while women mostly applied it to the upper lip, the problem showed up literally everywhere on the body, according to historian Gwen Clay. Now, women lost their hair all over their bodies, as well as suffering paralysis and even damage to their eyes, she written. So, one of Creme active ingredients was thallium acetate. Thallium was also used as rat poison and has since been banned in the US due to how toxic it is to even people and animals exposed accidentally. Creme didn't stay on the market, but it was no thanks to the FDA. The Journal of American Medical Association, which in 1932 described the product as a viciously dangerous depilatory, led to the diagnostic fight against Creme by publishing a series of articles about its effects. Women who suffered side effects of the popular product sued the company, forcing it into bankruptcy in 1932 after winning more than $2.5 million in damages. But the FDA, when consulted, could only refer to the JAMA's work, and Creme didn't qualify as a drug, and the agency didn't have power to regulate cosmetics yet at the time. Nothing like a beautifier that makes you into a terrifier. Gurad's Oriental Cream. Bonus points for that dicey name. Alright, so it's the 1920s, and there's a popular beauty cream called Rad's, and it's been on the market for decades, regardless of the horror stories you'd hear endlessly about it from all your girls. It constantly caused mercury poisoning from the calomel compound in it, which was no picnic to go through. Then, party on, you would develop dark rings around your eyes and neck, get bluish black gums that were jiggly like jelly, and lose teeth before dying from organ failure. Though women could wear the cream once or twice without ill effects, over time that definitely changed, but as mentioned, it was one of the products that just stayed on the shelves. The cream was available for decades, but the FDA started to regulate cosmetics in 1938 thanks to the Roosevelts at the House of Horrors event. Calomel was no longer allowed, which means I'll never experience a magic of a mercury-filled makeup, or figure out what the color Rachel cream was supposed to be for this brand. Become skinny by inviting a parasitic man-eating worm into your body. It's the tapeworm diet. And since this is still around today despite being illegal, I want to take a moment and say your body is genuinely beautiful and there are thousands of other options before this choice. So the idea is simple and gross. You take a pill containing a tapeworm egg, and once attached, the parasite grows inside of the host, ingesting part of whatever the host eats. In theory, this enables the dieter to simultaneously lose weight and eat without worrying about calorie intake. Wrong. Tapeworms take hold in various parts of the body and also grow large in size, resulting in blockage in organs and potentially even death. So it's not like it's just vibing out in your stomach forever unnecessarily. Having started in the 1900s, this trend was the result of the whole 16-inch waist BS that made women break their bodies with corsets. This was an era of beauty equaling sacrifice, and sacrifices were most certainly made once the desired weight was achieved. To get rid of the now unnecessary parasite, dieters would employ the same methods as those unwillingly afflicted by the worms. In Victorian England, this included pills or special devices. One such invention, created by Dr. Myers Sheffield, attempted to lure the tapeworm tapeworm by inserting a cylinder of food up the digestive tract. It comes as no surprise that many patients choked to death before the tapeworm was ever successfully removed. Some people still attempt this diet. In 2013, Today magazine reported a woman in Iowa bought a tapeworm online, swallowed it, and then had to go to a doctor for help. This trend wouldn't exist if society could get its crap together, which is skin bleaching. The issue of colorism and favoritism towards lighter skin has created a decimating global empire today worth more than $8 billion, profiting off of discrimination in today's beauty standards, and predicted to be $12.7 billion on the black market by 2027. This is made painfully obvious by literally every beauty trend we've discussed so far, and that we've covered in every video about beauty. Their goals are to be pale, pale, pale since the time of the Biazatines. In a study published in 2009, it was found lighter skinned black applicants reviewed more educated and had better work experience. And then in another famous study in 2011, it found darker skinned black women received harsher prison sentences than lighter skinned black women for the same crimes. So for many people, having lighter skin can mean the difference, how people treat them, see them, respect them. So as a result, we live in a world where beauty standards are often appropriated from people of color, whitewashed, regurgitated, only to be praised and adored then when previously laughed at and bullied. It tells someone that they're not beautiful unless they're pale. So as a result, skin bleaching creams, pills, injections, and other products come out, and they contain hydroquinones that work to reduce the amount of melanin in the skin by disrupting the melanin production. This can increase the risk of skin cancer, as melanin forms as a function to protect skin and eyes from UV rays. Chemical burns, infections, eczema, herpes, and other conditions also arrive. People have had skin blister off. And then the black market skin bleaches, which is the largest industry. Mercury is an active ingredient which can cause mercury poisoning, leading to damage to skin, liver, kidneys, and the nervous system. So this is a super deadly product. Prepared to be baffled by eyelash extensions. How could they ever be illegal or dangerous? I'm willing to guess that brains jump to glues, or maybe the lashes banned being made of something poisonous. Wrong and wrong. Be ready to yak, this one's rough. So tales of eyelash extensions in Britain seem to have been spawned by an 1882 news snippet by Henry Labuche in The Truth, which is referred to as the popularity of this procedure amongst Parisian beauties. Here is some of the snippet for you from the Dundee Courier, July 6, 1899, that describes the procedure. Be ready to fast forward if you're the queasy type. So, if your eyes are unattractive, you may make them irresistible by transplanting hair. Sounds alright. There's specialists who make a handsome living out of the process of transplanting hair from the head to the eyebrows or the eyelash. Let me jump ahead to through the Shakespeare talk here. Okay. An ordinary fine needle is threaded with a long hair genuinely taken from the head of the person being operated on. The lower border of the eyelid is then thoroughly cleaned, and in order for the process to be as painless as possible, rubbed with a solution of cocoa, not the hot chocolate one, the white one. The operator then, by a few skillful touches, runs his needle through the extreme edges of the eyelid, in and out along the edge of the eye, leaving hair threads in loops of carefully graduated length. Most of the hairs have been transplanted, take root and grow, but a few fall out. I've hated every second of that, so let's just move on. Yeah, psych guys, I'm gonna actually talk about more eye getting poked. So this is Lashler, a new and improved lash dye that would stop you from putting mascara on every day. Take my money. First manufactured in 1933, it was a beauty salon exclusive and bragged of it leaving you with a radiant personality. The first adverse after effect was reported literally July that year. Severe dermatitis of the eyelids surrounding the skin and edema that almost began immediately after dyeing the eyelashes with the Lashler product. Complete relief only occurred after they removed all her eyelashes. 4 months later, 4 new cases of adverse side effects with Lashler that included vesicular eruption and marked edema, as well as choroidea. Okay, never mind, big words you guys. Their eyes were essentially bubbling and melting. Takes a year for the first fatality, a 52-year-old woman who made the mistake of plucking her eyebrows before dyeing them. Within hours, her eyes swelled shut, then her fever went to 104, and after 8 days of agony and eyeball ulcers and decay, she died. Not only was there a rash, yes pun intended, of side effects from Lashler in 1933, but Franklin Roosevelt became president, and Roosevelt had a major goal to better public health. And in 1933, Chicago Fair said he put up the House of Horrors, showing befores and afters of unregulated products' effect on people. One was a woman before and after being blinded by Lashler. Still, it wasn't until 1938 that the federal FDCA passed, which finally regulated cosmetics. The first product seized under the new law was Lashler, which was alleged to have been adulterated with poisonous or delirious substances, a coal tar preparation, and a bunch of other big scary terms. Last but not least though is Radium Girls. When radium was discovered and successfully used as a cancer treatment, people made the mistake of seeing it as an all-powerful health tonic, taken essentially like a probiotic. It became an additive in a number of everyday products, from toothpaste to cosmetics and even food and drinks. One such preparation, called Radithor, was simply distilled water with tiny amounts of the substance dissolved in it. You could just buy it in cases, you know, like go to Costco, that type of thing. Then came the tacky 1920s fads, and one was glow-in-the-dark water. The dials were covered in a special luminous paint, shone all the time, and didn't require charging in sunlight. It looked like magic. One of the first factories to produce these watches opened in New Jersey in 1916. It hired about 70 women, the Radium Girls, the first of thousands to be employed in many such factories in the United States. It was a well-paid, glamorous job, and since it was the most expensive substance in the world and a wonder drug, Radium Girls believed they were getting healthier as they worked, especially because they were told to lick the paintbrushes to point them. What an honor. Then came the symptoms: the toothaches, the fatigue, the nausea, the loss of taste, the infertility. Then came the first death, Molly Magia, 22, who died after years of agony and her doctor removing what was left of her jaw. Radium Girls dropped like flies after that. For 2 years, their employers ferociously denied any connection between the girls' deaths and their work, even when their commissioned study concluded the girls had died from their pain. They did multiple more studies until one gave them the answer they wanted. So the public continued to assume radium was safe in their beauty products and in their food. In 1925, Harrison Martlin's test proved conclusively radium had poisoned the watch painters by destroying their bodies from the inside. In 1927, attorney Raymond Barry agreed to accept this case, but many of the watch painters had just months to live and were forced to accept an out-of-court settlement. Still, their experiences made the issue of radium safety front-page story across the world, so even if the United States Radium Corp denied its role and women continued to get sick and die for 11 more years, it wasn't until 1938 when a dying radium worker named Catherine DeWolf Donahue successfully sued Radium Dial Co. over her illness, and that issue was settled.
Number 10. Queen of the Nile. For me, it's fun to think about the day in the life of an ancient Roman or Egyptian. I can only hope it was as beautiful as textbooks, movies, and video games make it out to be. But something that I find interesting is that the Egyptians were using makeup all those years ago. Yes, that's right, Cleopatra, being the bougiest of all the queens to ever grace our presence, or at least so Elizabeth Taylor would make me think so, had her fair share of makeup use. However, something that may not be fit for a queen was the Egyptian eye glitter. Oh boy, here we go. To achieve this, colorful insect beetles were crushed up and added to an applicable powder, where you would then brush that on your eyes. Look, bugs don't gross me out, but I don't exactly know if I'd want that all up in my business. To be fair, we shouldn't be grossed out because, I hate to tell you, but there's some products we still use today that might have a cup or two of bugs in it, just saying. Number 9. Royal Bite. It would be difficult to specify a queen who had this done, as there are probably simply too many, and it's more of a, well, service I guess than a product, but hear me out. Something I'm just extremely fascinated in and frightened by at the same time, taking place in Africa, Asia, and the South Pacific Islands. Your dentist's worst nightmare. Teeth sharpening. Ooh. Considered to be a thing of beauty. Many women, and even recently, have undergone this process of jungle dentistry. I for one cannot judge someone else's culture. However, I can judge the experience of acquiring such a look. And I know that just can't be fun. You ever get a cavity removed at the dentist and buddies just drilling into your tooth like John D. Rockefeller looking for some oil? Okay, well imagine someone filing your teeth down like a high school woodshop project. Yeah, no thanks. I get shivers just thinking about it, and all that blood and the powdered teeth just piling up in your mouth, and there's no suction thingy? Nah, that's just the worst, man. Nah, that ain't it. I talked to the chief, he's a dentist. That ain't it. Number 8. Shampoo. What's better than having a hot shower after a long day and just rinsing off the woes of the day? Honestly, it's one of my favorite things. For me, a nice hair wash feels good with my favorite shampoo, and because I'm a guy, my body wash, shampoo, and conditioner are all the same product. It's what we do. However, queens of the Inca civilization had more lucrative beauty products, to say the least. I say product because this was a process. What am I talking about? Fermented urine. What else, of course? Yes, that's right, the Incas' favorite way to combat those dry scalps was the forbidden lemonade. That's just gross, don't drink that. They would have clay pots filled with the golden broth, and then it was cast aside to really let those flavors come together. Or at least I think that's what's happening, that's something a chef would say. Anyway, once it reached the desired level of fermentation, it was then used to clean hair. Oh man, what a way to make a queen stay fresh. Just, message to the Incas, just stick to soap, man, don't do that. Imagine just like having it it feels so good. Oh, it smells great. I love this. This is fantastic. This is so great. I love this. Number 7, foundation. Sometimes all a girl or a queen needs is a little foundation. After all, who doesn't want to have a gorgeous glowing complexion? Especially if you're a queen. The royalty of ye olde Europe felt the same way, except their products were a little different than to what a queen would have today. Some products are hard to pitch and market, but this would be even hard to market in a Super Bowl commercial. The queens of ye olde Europe fell into a trend of having pale skin. So, to achieve this mixture, it was a mixture of lead and vinegar to coat the face that gave the desired pale look. That just sounds awful. Talk about scandalous. Our queen's makeup makes her smell like she's been working away in a lead mine all day. Naturally, this couldn't have been pleasant, but a girl's gotta do what a girl's gotta do. Beauty is pain, and sometimes it's really stinky. Number 6, Cowboy Action. Okay, not exactly a queen, but pretty close. Hear me out, guys. Sarah Winchester was the widow and the heiress of the Winchester rifle fortune. This included $20 million and 50% of shares of the company. Man, I wish that was me. And in case you didn't know, the Winchester Rifle Company was responsible for making guns good when a lot just weren't. And that model of rifle unfortunately took a lot of lives, so it's said that the Winchester mansion was haunted by the ghosts of the poor souls who found themselves at the business end of a repeater. Sarah allegedly was missing a few cards from the deck. All 6s and 9s, just a little crazy. So in her craziness, it's fair to say she spent some time with a Winchester rifle or two, which is quite a scandalous product for a queen who thinks she's seeing ghosts. Plus, women back then, besides Annie Oakley, weren't supposed to handle things like that because it was the 1800s and men were just really mean and stinky, and come on guys, give her a break. Ain't that woman can't shoot a gun? What are you talking about? Number 5, toxic eyes. It's no mystery that beauty products today can be filled with all kinds of lovely chemicals that make you look great. And there's tons of products from the past that could be labeled as scandalous. Well, how about putting literal poison in your eyes? Yes, that's right. Back to the women of ye olde Europe. The very same queens with the pale skin wanted eyes that sparkled. How to achieve this? Well, you just put drops of Belladonna in your eyes, which, if you didn't know, is poison. Like just straight up poison. It's bad. It would dilute the eyes, and that was considered beautiful. If you think that sounds like it's bad for your health, that's because it is. Long-term exposure to the Belladonna drops would lead to blindness. Yeah, it's kind of a trade-off there. Good looking eyes, go blind later. Yeah, no thanks. Number 4, the neck stretcher. No, that is not a WWE wrestler or finishing move, although it really sounds like one it could be. No, this is something I've always been fascinated with, really. It's just kind of out of this world. I'm talking about neck rings from some African and Asian cultures. Basically, over there in some cultures, the more a woman looks like the Kaminoans from Attack of the Clones, the better. And that means it's time to stretch the neck by slowly placing rings around a young woman's neck until it grows. And then you keep slapping those bad boys on until you've got so many rings on your neck, it'll make you say Cypher Diaz. Had to fit a little Star Wars in there somewhere. Truth be told, the neck doesn't actually stretch. It's more the shoulders are dropping from all that weight, which can weigh up to like 15 pounds or something. It's crazy. And if common folk take part in this lengthy procedure, the most beautiful of queens certainly did too. Number 3, this makes no sense. Look, with all the crazy, super awful, weird things that humans have done, at least most of the time in my opinion, there's a method to the madness. Poisonous eye drops do make your eyes pretty, sure. The urine shampoo does get rid of my dandruff, okay. But with this one, I mean, there's just no way. It just doesn't make sense. And I would have no idea how to present this to royalty, especially the Queen of the Nile. Toothpaste made from mice, yes. Just how though? It doesn't make any sense. Like, how is a mouse supposed to make your breath feel fresh over some herbs and nicer smelling things? Basically, you cut the mouse in half, like that's a normal thing to do, and then you put that in your mouth. Also, have you ever tried catching a mouse? That's not easy. Is there a mouse farm? So many questions. To me, it's just a really bad look to have the queen swishing around half a mouse in her mouth like some of Listerine's finest mouthwash. Ugh. Number 2, blondes have more fun. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a popular hair color, and believe it or not, I used to have natural blonde hair, like super blonde. And then Harambe left this plane of existence and my hair got darker. Cause life got darker. Now all I want to do is listen to MCR in my room and write in my journal about how nobody understands me while MTV plays on the TV my parents bought me in the background. Some people want to go blonde. This was true of royal women in ye olde times. So time to reach for some good old-fashioned hair dye right off the shelf, right? Let's read the ingredients together. Water, well, that's good, okay. I got a water. Lead, well, I got tons of that on my face already, so that's fine. And what is this, sulfur? What? Yeah, that's right, that's sulfur. Imagine slathering that stinky goodness all in your locks. This was something that the highly esteemed Tudor women actually did, or at least tried. I feel like you need a whole truck of this stuff to work. But then again, the smell. That's not how a queen should smell, is it? It's not right now, you shouldn't. It's not. Number 1, the Canary Girls. When Great Britain was at war, the Queen was a symbol of their freedom and democracy. True British strength to keep on carrying on. So the next time the Queen goes to visit a munitions factory to cheer on the women who are working hard day and night for the war effort, she might want to keep her distance. The high explosives used in the artillery shells, famously known as TNT, I'd break down the scientific name, but we all know my track record with reading. I can't. It is a very volatile substance, but not just for the explosive capabilities, but it's also toxic. Yeah, I didn't know this, I learned this. Very similar to the Radium Girls of the same fate. TNT with enough exposure can turn skin and hair a yellowy orange color. Now, we can't have Her Royal Majesty showing up somewhere looking like Big Bird, can we? To avoid being a literal blonde bombshell, perhaps stay away from the factory, Your Royal Highness. Number 10, FaceOff. Alright, so it's the 1900s, and technology has gotten good since the 1800s. That means a better life for everyone to enjoy. One such advancement was in women's cosmetics. Introducing the Radia, a brand of makeup that's formulated to make you glow, ladies. And if you don't glow, you can't shine. The secret ingredient? Radioactive materials. I honestly can't believe that this one is real, but yep, here I am. Yes, their makeup products contain concentrations of radioactive material to give you the facial boost that you need, tighten the skin, get rid of wrinkles, and literally make you glow. I'm not a doctor, and you probably aren't one either, but I don't think I have to tell you that applying nuclear material to your face every day before work is not a great idea. In fact, it might be a speedrunning strategy to see how fast you can end up in a hospital for radioactive sickness. I read a report from the chief, who's a nuclear scientist, and he said that's not it. Number 9, nail biter. There's a short amount of time on the clock. The scores are tied and your favorite team's player steps up to the pitch, plate, or wherever they need to be. Beer sweats begin to drip down your face onto a jersey that should have been thrown out 2 playoffs ago. The nachos and chicken wings that were once plentiful on your coffee table now lay barren with emptiness. This is what most sports fans would call a nail biter. But all Super Bowl predictions aside, is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in ye olde times, trimming their nails. How else but with the set of pearl chompers the Lord hath given you. That's just how people did it. Yes, that's right, they bit their nails off. Which even today is kinda gross. You gotta use the old noggin for a minute and think about how clean people's hands were. No running water, no modern toilet paper. Ooh, stinky. That is not a win-win situation. That's actually a lose-lose situation. Don't do that, that's gross. Number 8, mini brows. Back in ye olde times, pale skin was in, and so was dark eyebrows. How to achieve such a complexion? Well, bloodletting for the skin, but I've gone over that before. Something a little more heinous was committed to make ladies' eyebrows look luscious. Mice, a lady's best friend, right? Yeah. Besides some French rouge and ivory teeth, a common beauty practice was to have mouse furs as eyebrows. This is just wrong on so many levels. Mice are just gross as it is on a regular basis without them being on your face. But my question is, was there like a mouse hunter, or like, was there a mouse farm? Or was the buddy just scooping up mice out of the gutters and skinning them, and then, here you go, Your Highness, here's some fresh mice skins. Ooh, yuck, man, no. Number 7, pucker up. Hey, on this channel we've talked about some crazy stuff in history, and a lot of crazy stuff unfortunately had a lot to do with women being hugely mistreated in the past. However, some women acted against this. I'd give specific reasons for wanting to get back at the patriarchy, but I'd be here all day. One woman came up with a devious plan, a way to remove the stinky men from her life and to get away with it too. Introducing Aqua Tofana. It was an odorless, colorless poison that was slow acting and would resemble side effects of a sickness, or at least a common sickness at the time. It was marketed as a cosmetic. Women could wear this on their cheek, and when the big hunk of a man came in for a kiss, Well, it was probably one of the last things he would ever do. The main ingredients were arsenic and nightshade, which, if you didn't know, is very poisonous. Next time you forget to take the trash out at night, gentlemen, just take notice of when the wife wants to give you a kiss. It could be your last. Number 6. Boots with the fur. Most of you probably love a good pair of apple bottom jeans and some boots with the fur. But for our Silver Fox audience, they may remember a pair of denim that was more sinister. Bell-bottom jeans. Yes, that's right. These pants were wild to say the least. While its origins may be rooted in the Navy and sailors, their rise to fame was during the 60s and the white powder-fueled 70s. Remember disco? I know, right? High platform shoes, bell-bottoms, and leisure suits. Although I can't lie, I feel like I'd look pretty good in a leisure suit. Just saying, I don't know. This is just one of those beauty trends that we thought looked good, but in reality looked really strange. I'm sure that'll never happen again though. Not like the trends and fads that we have today will ever go out of style. We'll all be looking back and laughing at the silly things we wore, right? Oh man, I gotta clean up my closet. Are we still gonna be doing Fortnite dances then? I don't know, we'll see. Number 5, a whole lot of man. Well folks, I haven't done much traveling in my time, but it looks like I know where I'm headed next. To the body tribes of Ethiopia, where, ladies and gentlemen, it's men of my proportions that are most attractive. The men of the Bodhi tribe participate in beauty pageants of sorts where the winner is declared a hero and every girl in the village wants to be with the rotund hero. The men isolate themselves away for months at a time with no physical activity. Honestly, for a World of Warcraft player, isn't that hard? Where the men consume a diet that's high in fat to, well, make them fat. What's on the menu? I'm so glad you asked. Well, since the Bodhi tribe has such a great grasp on agriculture, the men drink cow's milk. Mixed with blood. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. After enough consuming of the milkshake from hell, the men's stomachs get fat, and the gawking commences. I'm more than just a cut of meat, ladies. You can't just treat me that way. Number 4, Shark Girls. Alright, when I was researching this one, I could barely even look at the footage. I was literally cringing in my chair. And this is coming from a guy who likes the Star Wars prequels. Yeah, I know. There's certain women of tribes around the world who have teeth like jaws that are considered beautiful. And I mean the shark, not the James Bond villain. The process of sharpening teeth is quite... well, interesting to say the least, as it's performed by dentists, and I would hardly call them dentists, as they use rocks and chisels to acquire this acquired look. Did I mention there's no anesthesia for this cosmetic surgery? All jokes aside, this is just a lot, and I actually get lightheaded just thinking about it. We gotta move on to the next point before I lose my lunch, or I pass out. Number 3, the George Costanza. Today, every girl wants those long, luscious locks. No split ends with healthy hair, and just a radiant glow. But women in ye olde Europe were after the chrome dome kind of look, if you know what I'm saying. They had their hair pulled back, revealing a large portion of their forehead. Hey, look ladies, not that there's anything wrong with balding. It happens. I'd be very ignorant to say that it might happen to me too. It could. When I get old, it'll probably happen. I actually know a guy who's balding right now. Shout out to him. It's just strange how something that could be considered not beautiful today was all the rage back then. Queens literally sat down on their chairs and said, "Give me the George Costanza look, please. I'm feeling like a real winner today, Jerry." Number 2, burn it off. In ye olde times, medicine wasn't great. That's no secret. And sometimes these trendy medical practices crossed over into beauty. What do I mean by that? Well, nobody's perfect, right? We've all got bumps, bruises, blemishes, zits, pimples, scars, moles, spots, freckles, skin tags, eye bags, boils, bunions, warts, dark spots, and some emotional damage that a therapist or a bottle of vodka could not fix. However, when people in the olde times needed to remove any of the list I just mentioned, besides the internal suffering that is chronic depression and anxiety, they use hot pokers. No, that's not medicine, but rather the same kind of hot poker that you put in a fire. They were used to burn whatever it was that, well, needed to be burned off. Yes, burned off. While still a medical practice, imagine how beautiful you would feel after your least favorite spot got burned off in excruciating pain and probably causing an infection. Are you ready? Here it comes. I'm gonna do it twice in this list, but I'll let you guys finish it. Are you ready? I spoke to the chief and he said, "It's not it." There you go. Ah, you said it. Let's go. Number 1, glowing teeth. Teeth are important, and this is a reminder that you should go to the dentist. Stop putting it off, seriously. Healthy mouth is gorgeous for everyone. So that's why you'd want to use Doramand, a radioactive toothpaste. A what? Yes, a radioactive toothpaste, coming full circle with the radiation today. This stuff was what it said on the box. And this one literally did say it on the box. It was radioactive toothpaste. Like that was something to brag about or something. I don't need to tell you why that's wrong or unhealthy. You may as well just sit in a room and leave an x-ray machine on all day at that rate. Only minty fresh toothpaste for me, please.
Alright, number 10. Clothes rations. As the war raged on, there was an immense amount of pressure placed on clothes manufacturers. Uniforms had to be made and maintained, and the increase in air combat required a surplus of parachutes, while the variety of environments required different materials for survivability's sake. As a result, in 1941, the British government introduced clothes rationing, where a number of coupons would be allocated each year. Different types of clothes would be worth different amounts of coupons, with 66 coupons given for every adult at the beginning of the rationing. As the war continued, this allocation began to shrink, and in 1945, the regular amount of coupons given per person was 24. Despite the war's end the following year, rationing continued until 1949 as the economy recovered, but had laid the foundations for a different type of fashion, generally in the style of informality. Number 9. Patriotic knitting. One of the more fascinating results of the wartime strain on clothes was the way in which it changed hobbies into forms of support. In the end, as husbands went off to war and wives asked how to help, the answer was given that they ought to knit. Evidence for this can be found in some fascinating wartime propaganda, which honestly deserves its own list, but my absolute favorite might be the poster asking if you remember Pearl Harbor and answering itself with Pearl Harder. Despite the cute ways in which the activity was promoted, knitting did end up having an effect, as even prior to Pearl Harbor, Americans were knitting sweaters and mittens to be sent off to the Eastern Front. Arguably, the fad peaked when Eleanor Roosevelt was photographed knitting for the war effort. As a result of this, some women had reportedly begun friendly competitions based on quantity of clothes knit, with one Scottish woman even hitting around 1,000 pairs of mittens by 1941. Number 8. Fashion is out of fashion. Other ways in which propaganda was set in favor of rationing was through the manipulation of what is considered fashionable. The effects of this will soon be seen, but one of the oldest publications in the history of fashion coined a phrase that caught on like wildfire. Fashion is out of fashion. While this leads more into the ways in which propaganda can allow for significant social changes, and it's also something that no one, not even you, are immune to, it's interesting to point out how wrong this was. Rosie the Riveter, for instance, was a remarkable piece of propaganda that's synonymous with the entirety of the Second World War, and yet she's presented in a way that is still somewhat fashionable. Thin eyebrows, applied makeup, and styled hair. All of these are things that you wouldn't have seen in a wartime factory, but it worked as intended and allowed for an increase in patriotic fervor far from the front. Number 7. Blackout Buttons. When German bombers began to make strikes on British cities, a major problem was coming to be more common. With the increased availability of electricity, it was then easy for bombers to pick electric power plants as targets, and eventually they started hitting their marks. A city under siege and darkness will be prone to mass panic and the fatalities that commonly occur with such things, and so a plan was devised to make for an easier transition. UV absorbing buttons and pins were created and distributed, some materials even making their way into the fabric of clothes as a whole. As a result, accidents were reduced in blackout conditions, and the material continued to be produced post-war with hobby figurines. However, more darkly, the material did make it easier to identify bodies in the collapsed rubble of homes. Number 6. Dog wool. After the implementation of clothes rationing, women who were not prepared to face the shortage ended up having to get creative. While the practice had begun in a minor way at the tail end of World War I, in 1941, business was booming in the dog wool industry, and it was soon discovered that some breeds' furs were better for spinning than others. Labradors and Spaniels' fur didn't work so well, and despite their visual similarity to sheep, Poodles' fur was the worst of all. The best breeds ended up being Collies, Sheepdogs, Chows, and Pekingese. Even with that, the trend died the moment clothes rationing ended, likely to the dog's satisfaction. And our noses. Number 5. Viscose Rayon. Well documented in the book Fake Silk by Paul David Blanc, when the world went to war, the commodity of viscose rayon saw a massive boom. However, the method of creating the chemical links in order to build viscose rayon was extremely toxic, resulting in an unprecedented loss of life as the effects were felt in the 60s. This was felt in particular on the Axis side of power, with prisoners of war and political prisoners being forced to produce the material at an extremely high rate. The conditions were so bad that reportedly, German factories implemented nets around the second floor of the buildings to prevent their workers from taking their own lives. Number 4. Make do and mend. Another excellent wartime piece of propaganda. This piece was yet another effect of wartime clothes rationing, generally focusing on ensuring that civilians made their clothes last as long as possible. Make do and mend was a social movement that hoped to lighten the impact on morale. The general idea started with simply using whatever materials you had to fix any clothes that were damaged, but eventually it spiraled into homemade fashion. Initially, it was simply done by wearing soldiers' clothes while they were away, then turning worn down clothes into new clothes, then making clothes out of food bags or belts from cellophane. Reportedly, few husbands ever noticed. Number 3. She wears the pants. Hard to imagine now, but work with me. Back in the day, women wearing pants was a bit of a faux pas. But as the whole patriotic utilitarian image crept into popularity, most of these social conventions were demolished. Interestingly, post-war there was an immediate push to return to these established norms, which was fought against vehemently. With nearly a decade's worth of time to become entrenched, the social pushback was difficult to justify beyond the general aesthetic means, as men just wanted to see women wearing dresses again. The counterpoint was that it was still a nightmare to get any clothes at all, but it was also pretty fair to state that pants were just fairly comfortable. Just one more of those little pushes in the direction of increased autonomy. Number 2. Uniform hierarchy. An interesting note was in the cultural impact of how men's uniforms were perceived by prospective wives. As it turned out, there was a sort of hierarchy to how men were valued that was separate from their actual rank, and it was entirely determined by the color of their uniform. With the British military, the PBI, which stands for Poor Bloody Infantry, were at the bottom of the barrel, also referred to as the brown jobs. Then there were the naval officers, who were seen as quite fetching with their dark blue uniforms. Further up than those was the Royal Air Force blue. In at number 1, woodies. When Japan entered the war, their stranglehold on rubber made the material virtually impossible to find. As a result, the supplies required to produce the soles for shoes dwindled, and the search for new material began. According to Harper's Bazaar, the material ended up being wood. Woodies, as they were called, were a strange type of shoes and apparently difficult to wear when compared to most other shoes. So much so that magazines selling them apparently had to publish guides on how to properly walk with them.
Getting us started at number 10 is top hats. A top hat is an iconic image. You can see them in old black and white movies or on logos such as Mr. Peanut. But why were top hats created, and why were they so trendy? Well, there's multiple reasons actually. Men and women were already wearing hats and bonnets to protect their heads from rain, wind, and the soot from local smokestacks. As a result, hats were already quite a trendy wear. However, the true reason for its popularity is what it represented. The top hat quickly became symbolic of status, power, and masculinity. From 1850 to 1900, men wore top hats for business, pleasure, and formal occasions. Certain colors were even associated with certain times of day. For example, a black top hat was for day or night, making its wearer feel taller, more handsome, even suave. Some were even reported to be a height of 12 to 14 inches tall. Top hats, amongst other hats of this era, also required ridiculous upkeep, such as being brushed, boiled regularly, powdered, etc. They also tend to contain mercury poison. As time progressed, we found other ways to overcompensate as well as accessorize our heads, so it's easier to see why the top hat never made a comeback. Number 9 in the countdown is women and their flirty fans. When you see a gentleman caller across the room, you may want to send him a hint that you're picking up the vibe that his top hat is putting out. What better way than subliminal messaging with an item you're already carrying? In Victorian times, women carried fans due to fainting spells, which were really just the result of their excessively tight and heavy garments, something we'll cover later in the video. In 1827, a fan maker from Paris, Dovelroy, published a leaflet explaining the language behind the uses of a fan. Some examples were twirling the fan in the right hand meant that I love another. Meanwhile, drawing the fan across the cheek told someone special that I love you. A fan half opened and pressed to the lips gave permission for a kiss. However, it is rumored that the less romantic truth is that the fan etiquette, such as Dovelroy's leaflet, was invented in order to boost the sales of fans in the 19th century after they had fallen out of fashion following the French Revolution. Irregardless of rumors, it appears in olden times some people were using fans to get hot rather than cool down. Speaking of keeping it cool, next in our countdown at number 8 is bottomless underwear. While showing a bit of ankle may have made you a harlot, in the Victorian era every woman was walking around with crotchless undergarments. But these strange underoos were invented with a justified purpose. Due to the amount of fabric layers, steel crinolines, and tight bodices and dresses, women of the era didn't really have time to spend an hour undressing before nature calls. By creating undergarments that had holes aligned with the wearer's groin, a woman's only mission would be to hoist up as many layers as she could before popping a squat. Don't be fooled, however, that wasn't exactly easy either. Some of you may wonder what happened if Aunt Flo paid a visit while a woman was wearing an open bottom undergarment. Well, in Victorian times, menstruation hygiene was perceived very different and women quite literally let it flow. If you want to learn more, search that one up on your own. As fashion evolved and women wore fewer and lighter clothes in the early 20th century, pulling down undergarments from underneath bustles and cages was no longer a nightmare, so the crotchless undergarment was soon abandoned once more. But now it does make sense why everyone loved the high-kicking can-can dancers in 19th century Paris. Morning garb, and I don't mean pajamas, is number 7 in our countdown. Known as the monarch of mourning, Queen Victoria influenced how grieving women dressed and behaved in Europe and the United States after the passing of her husband in 1861. She famously mourned him for 40 years until her own demise, and started what's now known as the Victorian mourning etiquette. Victorian mourning etiquette came with elaborate rituals to commemorate their dead. It became normal to have incredibly elaborate and lavish funerals, curtail social behavior, and even erect statues and ornate monuments as tombstones. Mourning clothes were part of this, and they were introduced for both sexes. Set to show a family's outward display of their inner feelings after the passing of a loved one, the rules for who wore what and for how long were complicated and often outlined in popular journals or household manuals. Call that a mourner's magazine. Jokes aside, men definitely had it a lot easier. They simply wore their usual dark suits along with black gloves, hat bands, cravats, or ties. For women, especially should she be a widow, there were different levels of mourning and garb to wear as you progressed out of deep mourning and into lighter mourning and so forth. Deep mourning was of course black, but also made specifically was a crepe styling, a scratchy silk with a puffed, crimped appearance associated with mourning as it doesn't pair with any other clothing. Right. The mourner would eventually stop donning the crepe and then stop donning black. This was called slightening the mourning, before cloth colors eventually moved on to gray, mauve, then white, until the mourning period was considered complete. Number 6 in our countdown is the human hair wearers. Fun because it rhymes, but creepy for a whole slew of reasons. So, what do I mean by human hair wearers? Well, it was a tradition in Victorian era to don jewelry that had segments of human hair embossed, woven, or sealed into it. But for many Victorian people, the amount of hair involved in remembering loved ones went far beyond a little lock in a necklace. In stores and women's magazines, you could find patterns for wreaths made of hair and wire, often floral designs. Bracelets, brooches, earrings, and necklaces were also all very common. In its prime, human hair jewelry and decor was considered incredibly fashionable. It's even said that swapping locks of hair was a love token between women loving women or friends, the way that girls today might wear friendship bracelets with each other. I guess if you need a trim and you were already late on a birthday gift, you could really just kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Number 5 in the countdown is all about buggy dresses. The wealthy Victorians were very into the grandeur, looking to feed a fascination with culture especially. Beetle wing embroidery was at a peak of fame in the 18th century India, and was quickly appropriated by English visitors while military occupied the country from 1858 to 1947. Elytra, which is the hard casing over a beetle's wing, first appeared on dresses and experienced their first burst of popularity in England by the 1820s, though English women in India India had likely been donning it since at least the 1780s. Material used was often white or other pale colors to help augment the reflective green tones of the beetle wing. This visual was made possible when elytra was paired with zardozi, a gold embroidery style often done on colored cottons or silks. Victorians at least didn't appropriate everything about the art form. They made patterns and styles of their own for the dresses. Elytra was sewn onto the gowns in an imitation of live beetle patterns, a reflection of Victorian interest in naturalism and zoology. Not sure why anyone wants to look like they have live bugs crawling on them, but okay. Number 4 is the casual ball gown. One of the most notable shifts in Victorian time was that fashion began to be differentiated by gender rather than class. This reflected the changing roles of women in society. And let me say, every part of Victorian women's fashion seems tortuous. You start your day layering on long crotchless underwear and tunics before strapping a metal cage to your waist. You then wear an average of 6 skirts over that, alongside bodices and corsets that would forever change the placement of your organs and potentially even suffocate you to death. The reported average weight of a Victorian dress when fully on could be anywhere between 14 and 22 pounds. But the risk doesn't end there. In fact, it was everywhere. It was estimated that between the 1850s and 1860s, 3,000 women in England died from their crinolines catching fire, as airy fabrics and hoop-supported skirts also allowed for plenty of air to circulate beneath a dress, which could also make a small flame grow out of control in seconds. In 1864, the New York Times reported that 40,000 women worldwide perished from dress-related fires. Another common occurrence was to see them pulled into machinery after walking too close and having some of the skirts catch in exposed parts. Yikes. It's no wonder that the large ball gown crinolines phased out in the late 1800s, but then bustles came in and they were worse in different ways. While more practical as it was slim on the sides and the front, it required women to sacrifice movement and comfort in order to achieve a fashionable shape like the corset did. They began to alter women's spines, ribs, and organs over time, as they required women to twist their bodies completely in order to be able to sit down. Overall, while movies and TV may make these beautiful gowns seem whimsical and ethereal, they truly were just death traps. Number 3 in the countdown is bird-brained. I enjoy my puns, but there's a reason for that one. This trend was started by the notorious Marie Antoinette, a rebel in the French courts for her outlandish fashion and accessories. Amongst her pile of powdered curls, Marie was often seen with feathered caps and bonnets. While this look became an envy for women across America and Europe, the trend did struggle to take off initially, as much of the aristocracy was perturbed by it. However, a trend is a trend, and eventually the English society was persuaded. They donned mainly ostrich, pheasant, or peacock feathers at first. Eventually entire songbirds were stuffed after their death and adorned these hats. By the late 1800s, the plume trade had decimated several species of birds, including flamingos, birds of paradise, and rosy spoonbirds. Topping the endangered list were the snowy and great egrets, as at one point their pure white feathers were worth more than gold. Promoters of the feather trade knew what they were doing and also knew that the public didn't understand the carnage that their fashion was sieging on these animals. They held that wearing feathers and whole birds brought city dwellers closer to nature, that it improved people's awareness and knowledge of bird species. Thankfully, it's due to the inevitable public awareness and then disapproval that bird hat sales diminished and went out of trend altogether. Number 2 slot in the countdown is Paris green. It seemed Parisian aristocracy had a chokehold on the globe with their trends. It's believed Empress Eugenie was to have worn a dress so stunning at the Paris Opera one evening in 1864 that it was featured in newspapers globally the next day. It was a deep yet vibrant green, one rumored to almost glow in darkness. The green of Paris quickly became the hue of the social elite. So, how was Paris green made, and why was it so dangerous? The color was discovered when chemists combined copper and arsenic poison. The result was a dye brighter than all the other greens available on the market. Copper wasn't what gave this color its iconic nickname, however. Arsenic is a highly hazardous substance that causes skin sores, vomiting, diarrhea, and in some circumstances cancers or death, as we know now. But they didn't. When factory workers' arms and hands began to wilt away from sores and decay that could only be connected to the dye, French and German governments enacted legislation prohibiting the production of arsenic-based pigments. It's the right thing to do. Meanwhile, the British government mainly ignored them, even when Matilda Schrewer famously died of arsenic poisoning with the whites of her eyes stained green from her working in factories. This was deemed accidental poisoning by the government at the time. Paris green remained popular in England until, ironically, it just went out of trend. It's a little bit of an abrupt ending, honestly. No justice for those exposed in workplaces or compensation for suffering, but nothing takes the cake quite like the Victorian trend of looking dead, which is #1 in our countdown. You'd figure people look dead enough as is, inhaling arsenic and mercury from their clothes and shoes and hats constantly, let alone their home decor, but looking dead was the fashion of the day. This look was specifically modeled after how tuberculosis affected you. Pale skin, watery eyes, red lips. While this disease was decimating the lower status, higher status women recreated it with makeup and arsenic consumption. You heard me right. In order to get pale skin, women consumed arsenic. In order to not die from arsenic, the consumer had to follow a careful process, eating small doses to build up a tolerance. Now, arsenic is addictive, so if they at any point stopped the consumption, they would experience withdrawals such as vomiting, stomach pains, convulsions, hair loss, nervous system failure, kidney failure, delusions, the list goes on. Some women were stuck taking it for the rest of their lives. For the desired watery eye look, women would put citrus or even perfume in their eyes. Some went farther, using belladonna flower, also known as deadly nightshade, for longer lasting tears. However, being poisonous, little wonder why blindness was widely reported as a symptom of belladonna drops. No wonder it did such a good job. Red lip paint included, you guessed it, more poison. In this case, usually lead. All of these poisonous products would contribute to illnesses and facial decay. Death was of course a long-term side effect of the usage once poisoning reached its crescendo. Suffice to say, while you may really want to fit in, some trends are not worth getting on board for, especially if they'll slowly melt your face off.
And coming in at number 10, stiff collars. This early 1900s invention was accidental by nature, but seems absolutely painful just hearing about it. The detachable collar or stiff collar, created by Hannah Montague in New York in 1827, has been coined the father killer. But why? Well, this stiff detachable collar is so stiff that men could die from just wearing it. Yeah, basically just rubbing your jugular up against it all day would restrict oxygen to the brain. You could pass out or even die. This man was killed by a collar! So basically your own collar is rear naked choking shit out of you all day. I thought the tie was the worst part. Made out of usually a separate material to the shirt pinned onto, the removable, starched to absolute hell and back collar basically turns as a sharp and rigid on your neck as a knife. Pain is beauty, darling. Apparently men would fall asleep after a couple of drinks or succumb to a cat nap and sometimes not even wake up at all. Dressed to death. Literally.
Number 9. Mini bowler hats. Ah yes, are you tired of bowler hats fitting on your head properly? Are you stuck in the 1940s and you're now tired of regular sized, properly fitting bowler hats? Well, fear not, old heads. Introducing mini bowler hats. Yep, that right there is fashion right there, folks. Take something that's already working and then just jazz it up, just mess it up just a little bit. This look didn't last too long because only a few could pull it off, obviously. The hat wouldn't fit on your head, that was the whole point. A hat that isn't supposed to fit. It was always sideways and like dainty, it was kind of half off. Any swift breeze comes along, good game, the hat's gone. Now you're chasing a mini bowler hat down the road like it's a silent film.
Whoa, oops, sorry, my hat.
Harper's Bazaar deemed the mini bowler hat one of the worst of the 1940s. Yeah, I see a lot of hats now that aren't on all the way. Drives me nuts. I just wanna put it on. It's always like about to flap off. I'm like, you're gonna lose it, man. The wind's gonna come, you're gonna lose that hat. It's a nice hat.
Number 8, bad teeth. If you've had a couple root canals like me and enjoy the taste and feel of your tongue ripped to shreds after a big old bag of sours, well, then this one's for you. Opposed to the nice clean white smile we all strive for today, back then the sight of bad teeth was actually, well, charming. It usually meant you had a lot of money. Those disgusting peasants and their hygiene. Teeth have a lifespan on their own, and the white discoloration from poor hygiene happens to all of us on its own. But the best method and the fastest method to ensure that those little chompers become stinky and brown, sugar. Which, if you were living anywhere between the 12th and 19th century, was very expensive and really hard to come by. So why the fashion craze? Well, it's got multiple purposes. For instance, in Southeast Asian cultures, blackening one's teeth, or the Japanese ohaguro, was seen as both a beauty standard and a tooth preserver. This process would happen by coating the teeth in a mixture of goop, usually made out of iron, vinegar, and vegetable tannin to dye the teeth black. Queen Elizabeth is a great example of this beauty standard. She would basically just smash a sugar goop into her mouth every day to purposely destroy her teeth. The more infected and discolored the teeth, the better. Ew.
Number 7, propeller hats. Okay, I'm coming for hats in this video, it seems. Sorry about that. Propeller hats in Super Mario, very practical. A lot of Goombas, sudden gusts of wind, plus a few warp pipes. You're gonna need a lift or two, right? Fair. The summer of 1947, not that windy folks. Not windy enough for propeller hats, I'll tell you that for free. Why are teens in the 40s wearing airport runway anemone eaters on their heads? Why? We don't need to know the wind velocity outside, just go eat some ice cream. Well, it started with a cartoonist named Ray Faraday Nelson. See, he used this propeller hat in a cartoon, and then later on at a sci-fi convention, he had the cartoon there with a real-life propeller hat. And everyone was like, what, how? How did he just do that? This of course swept the nation, just like the fidget spinner. Brands made their own versions, they hopped on the trend quickly. So quick in fact that Nelson never had time to even secure a patent for this new, fresh idea. Yeah, it was too late. He didn't get a dime from the hats, and we didn't get the gift of solo flight. So let's call it even, Ray.
Number 6, ruffs.
With silken coats and caps and golden rings, with ruffs and cuffs and farthingales and things.
Taming of the Shrew, Act 4, Scene 3. Ah yes, the theater and the ruff. Well, not that rough, but quite literally theater in a ruff. A ruff, I sound like a dog. A ruff, or also known as the Elizabethan collar, was an interchangeable piece of cloth that could itself be laundered separately while keeping the wearer's gown from not being soiled at the neckline. Long story short, no Chef Boyardee spilling out of your mouth and down onto your clothes. Hey, that's a good idea. The stiffness of the garment forced upright posture and poise. Most ruffs could only be worn once due to its longevity and structure. Made out of a very fine material like silk, their light and delicate material, design, and size led them to become a symbol of wealth and status amongst the upper class. There was even a time where blue dyed ruffs were against the law in England, since it resembled Scotland's colours on its flag.
It shall only be of 2 primary colours, yellow and blood. Or red. Red.
Number 5, smoke break jackets. Here we go. Hey, remember Hugh Hefner? Yeah, not only did he treat women like but he also dressed like it completely. Yeah, rather fitting if you ask me. Guy would wear a stinky maroon colored jacket and then sit there and blow smoke in your face all night. What an icon. Guy changed history. He would wear what's called a smoking jacket. That's what this garbage is. They were around in the 1600s, but they really peaked popularity in the 1920s, when Hugh was like 56 years old, you know what I mean? These jackets were designed for gentlemen, I mean obviously, you know, they were designed as bathrobes with class. They were made of this velvet cloth, perfect for soaking up cigar smoke and further accusations. God rest his soul. He really left his mark in history, didn't he?
Number 4, corsets. Okay, we know literally everything about these things, but you don't, so listen up. If you have to put your foot in the middle of my back to lace me up, yeah, it's too tight. Or is it? A stiff and rigid piece of clothing that I could definitely use for my posture. The corset, first invented in Italy, then France, then England, the rigid posture and protective garment around the kidneys, ribs, and vital organs under a knight's armor were adopted for style, class, and shape. Most popularized during the 16th century, this slim and sleek look was adored and worn by all classes. The best way for a woman to shape her bust, a man's chest straight and high while riding, and a great way to lose consciousness.
No, I can breathe. Go a bit tighter. Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Usually made out of something strong like whalebone or wood. The stitched corsets would maintain its hard shape and the wearer would basically just be stitched in for the entirety of the day. That sounds comfortable.
Number 3, hammer pants. Okay, look, Kyle and I were on a dance team or two growing up, we get it. Baggy pants, extra zippers, zippers that don't even have pockets, pockets that are far too shallow to hold even that of a chapstick. We get it, okay? We love a good pair of dance pants. The hammer pants from the 90s, I don't think that was it. We should have heeded MC Hammer's warning and not touched it, you know what I mean? The man turned 60 this year, so we have to now look back on the truth. From him, MC Hammer himself has made it very clear. He says, quote, "Don't call them parachute pants. I detest the term." End quote. Yeah, man of few words, but you know what? When you sing that many songs, you don't need to speak anymore. Obviously, MC Hammer didn't invent this style, but it's funny to see him act like he did. You know what I mean? These types of trousers initially appeared in Persia, India, and Turkey thousands of years ago, but we love your bangers, MC Hammer. all three.
Number 2, Belladonna drops. Growing up with bad vision, I've had some pretty weird things shoved into my eyes. Dirty fingers, drops, but never a scoop of berry jam. Nah, I kinda missed out on that one, I guess. Okay, maybe not jam, but the Belladonna berries, though very toxic, had an unusual role in beauty standards in medieval Europe. Upon squishing this doughy-eyed remedy into your sockets, the person's, usually women's eyes, would dilate, resulting in huge, doughy puppy dog eyes, just running around town with blurred vision like you're about to get ophthalmologisted. EML49 strawberry, raspberry, blueberry, that's not, okay, what? Of course, you wouldn't be able to see how good you looked per se, as if you've ever been dilated for optometrist reasons, then you know exactly what I mean. The Belladonna or Beautiful Woman drops got you running into walls every 2 seconds, but boy oh boy does she look beautiful.
Number 1, paper dresses. This short-lived fad was introduced in the 1960s. It was a good one. It was exactly what you think. Paper dresses, nice. Paper Mario in real life. Finally, I've always wanted this. I could already feel the paper cuts. What a nightmare this ought to be. Here we go. Paper dresses to go. That was the phrase they like to use. They said the word go twice, therefore must be a good product. The Scott Paper Company made these not expecting the reaction that it got. It caught on quickly, of course. It only took 6 months for this casual paper company to start selling more than 500,000 paper dresses. Just out of nowhere, they're like, oh, let's just try this, and then it worked. It went so well that other companies hopped on board, just like the propeller hats. Over $3 million were spent on this awful fad. Andy Warhol was even in on the mix. It was a big deal. Everybody wanted to be involved. They weren't made of flimsy printer paper. It wasn't as bad as I'm making it sound, but it certainly wasn't great either. The dress was made of disposable material called Duraweave, before it was cool to make things out of disposable materials. Believe it or not, it was slightly water and slightly fire resistant. Unlike those puffy middle-aged dresses that immediately go whoom, and then they don't exist anymore. This one was a little bit better. Took the flame a little bit of time, right? It's been compared to the thick paper bib that you get at the dentist. Yeah, you know that horrible material that bunches up and pokes your neck mid-root canal while Kyle's doing stuff? It's made of that. Fun. We love history. We love beautiful fashion history.
And number 10, leather jackets. I just had to say that cool. I felt like I needed to. Okay, so how did we get from prehistoric leather to grease lightning? This warm, durable piece of clothing has been popular for many eras, but now, where did it all start? Well, firstly on the animal. The leather jacket we're used to seeing is based off the World War I jackets. That's right, German pilots wore these brown, thick leather jackets in their planes before the cooler, sleeker bomber jacket was born. From the early 1900s, we see the leather jacket really start to take off with more military use in World War II, now worn by all sides. Irvin Schott's initial design was created in 1928 and widely used by military motorcycle personnel. He named the first one the Perfecto, after his favorite cigar company. It wasn't until the 1950s and 60s where we see this garment take on a sense of actual fashion, with studs like McQueen and Brando repping the look in Hollywood movies, and well, there it took off. Punks in the 70s and 80s, women, men, these are all everywhere now. Of course, the faux leather has also made its way into life now with the abuse and cruelty of animals. I'm all here for it, not judging. It comes in literally every size and color, and you can literally buy a leather jacket anywhere you go.
Number 9, Lashler. Turning the calendars back to 1933, the year FM radios and drive-in movie theaters changed the world as we know it. Right on. I love both of those things. Still. So much, for sure. See, not all inventions in 1933 were family friendly. Some of them were quite deadly. Like the one-of-a-kind mascara, Lashler. Here we go. It'll lure you right in. Easy peasy. This 1930s cosmetic contained a chemical called p-phenylethylamine. I can't even say it. That's how you know it's bad, right? This mascara left blisters all over your face. It wasn't working. The chemicals didn't react properly for some cases, and it was horrible. Now, eventually, in 1933, there was sadly a death. One woman sadly developed an infection, a bacterial infection, and ultimately passed away because of said mascara. That same year, the before and after photos were used in an FDA display titled The Chamber of Horrors. Yeah, it was a horrible incident, but it got the attention from higher-ups. Lashler was the first product in history that was ever removed from stores. There's a little dark fun fact for you. I guess the display at the old Chamber of Horrors did the trick. lord. We're in the middle of something similar now though, aren't we? Cigarette packages have those horrible side effects to smoking images right there on the package, you know? The chick on the cover looks like a demigorgon from Stranger Things. You're like, ugh, I'm all set. I'm just gonna fidget spin this. That's horrible.
Number 8, sunglasses. This bright invention was first created in the 12th century China. This rough, heavy slab of carved quartz was first used in an attempt to block the sun's powerful rays while being able to protect the face and eyes. These glasses didn't have ear rods and were just held up against the face. The Inuit of North Canada have something like this as well, made out of bone or a piece of wood, carved with slits cut out of it for the eyes to see into the bright snow. The smoky glass texture of the quartz allowed the person to see through the glasses and have the rays refracted through the dark color. See, I said refracted, lots of scientific words, you know what I mean? Basically, they were just experimenting with different smoky rocks and gems in front of their face until James Arscow started making way with tinted lenses in the 18th century. The rich were wearing more and more shades until about 1939 when Ray-Ban made the aviator polarized lenses and the shades were forever changed. First pair sold for $5. 40 days to carve and polish for $5, huh? It's not a bad deal.
Number 7, big foreheads. Here we go. This one's for the ladies. Nice. Hit that thumbs up for this big old forehead, this bright forehead. You can see the lights off. If I stand here, that's the forehead light right here. Elizabethan foreheads. Yes, here's one I can finally lean into. My family called me a 5-head growing up. Little did they know I would have cleaned up shop back in the 1600s. Here we go. Plucking your hairline was a sign of beauty back in the day. How amazing is that? I mean, it still is today, but it's different, right? We're kind of pulling back. We're like, you know what? No, I don't want to pluck anything anymore. It hurts. I'm done. More often than not, women in the Renaissance era wore restrictive upper body clothing. The ideal look back then was flat-chested and hair plucked back, like you're a goddamn chicken. I can't even pluck this unibrow thing that I have going on here. I just shave it. I give up. Plucking hurts. I'm just gonna shave this one spot for the rest of my life. So, mad respect to the pluckers out there. Pain is beauty, I guess. Ice Road pluckers.
Number 6, cowboy hats. Well, howdy, partner. Made most popular by horse riders, farmers, and your buddy named Dougie, the cowboy hat or cavalry hat has been around for quite a long time. First started with the Mongolian riders and then taken on new shapes and forms throughout history as the wide-brimmed hat. The cowboy hat is back and popularized in southern states around the early 1800s. Made out of literally any material from straw to felt, this large crown, large brimmed hat kept the sun out of your face and off your body. Hey, sun safety. It resembles the sombrero from the early Mexican use and influence. These things have been around for centuries and are still thriving. I mean, just go to any Kenny Chesney concert, you'll find about 100 on the ground after the concert. Just pick one up, put it on your head, free. Some have strings, some have feathers. The cowboy hat has made its place in fashion and practically yeehaw forever. That's a terrible joke.
Number 5, bleats. Heading back to the 12th century for this gem. European men and women both rock this look, okay? Of course, sleeves that droop down all the way to the floor. Who wouldn't want a piece of that action? Walking around all slow like this for no reason? We've seen Lord of the Rings. Imagine walking around in a castle with one of these, playfully just dragging behind you as you emerge from the cellar on a full moon night. Oh, my majesty. I'm gonna faint thinking about it. That's easy. Man, we need bleats back today. I wish I had a couple bleats for prom. I wouldn't have even had to ask her to dance. I would just stick my bleats out and then a queen would accompany me. Just like that, voila. The roots for this dazzling look go back to the French Germanic origins. The word translates to our modern day use of blouse because it was the same light, ghosty material. Yeah, imagine attending a meeting in a bleat blouse made of silk. Immediate write-up, so fast.
Number 4, the bikini. I don't know why, but for some reason in every picture as a kid I'm running around in a sexy black Speedo. You know the deal. No shorts, just thong on cheeks. I was always embarrassed by the lack of clothing and felt vulnerable, but learned growing up that that's fashion, baby. Sometimes you feel a little uncomfortable. The bikini, a controversial and even at many times illegal piece of clothing, is a piece of fashion that has been around as early as 5600 BC, and the history of the bikini can be traced back to that era. Carvings and paintings of women wearing bikini-like garments during the competitive athletic events in Rome have been found in several locations. Most of the time worn by women, the bikini went through a ton of design. Two-piece bathing suits have been seen all over the world, so what's the problem? Well, it's illegal in certain places and illegal now, still. Inappropriate use of showing off one's body could be a crime around the early 1900s. Police would just walk around the beach and measure the length of a two-piece bathing suit. You have the right to remain silent, anything you do or say. The 30s and the 40s, it's still pretty exotic and people were kind of shady about the idea of revealing so much skin. The 40s and the 50s comes around, starts to become a little bit more Hollywoodized, and then the 60s and 70s, it's on every magazine in America. The two-piece bikini is worn today and is a symbol of confidence and sexuality. How much do you think they go for?
Number 3, moon boots. Unless you're Link from the past and or future, you're not pulling off a pair of moon boots, okay? Sorry to burst your bubble. Back in the late 60s, these hot and heavy pieces of footwear were the hottest trend in town for some reason. Yeah, winter boots all year round. We love it. Fashion. But yeah, welcome to Canada. Also, we wear these 11 months out of the year. It sucks. My ankles are always hurting. Moon boots originally appeared in 1969 in Italy, and it was part of a ski wear collection, but add a little Apollo 11 moon landing into the mix, now we have a fashion trend in history. Now we all think we're astronauts and we're dragging our feet to the club in the middle of July. Once space became old news, so did the Apollo boots, sadly. We've seen these bad boys appear in modern history. Chanel, Jeremy Scott, big names are still trying to bring back the moon boots. Let's bring back the moon shoes. How about that? How about a functioning pair of those? Remember the commercial? Kid jumps, grabs an apple, lands. Just false advertising at its best.
Number 2, high heels. The high-heeled shoe or high heels, or simply known as "where's my heels?" have been a piece of fashion since the early 10th century. The design raises the heel of the wearer's foot significantly higher off the ground than the wearer's toes, causing the wearer's legs to appear longer, make the wearer appear taller, and accentuate muscle tones in the wearer's legs. It's all about the calves nowadays, man, all about the calves. Typically seen as a men's garment until the mid-1500s, the high heel is a staple in today's fashion, as its design and functionality hasn't changed in almost 1,000 years. King Louis XIV of France made heels a standard and would have himself hundreds of pairs of gemstones, lavishly precious metal-lined high heels, basically just one of the Kardashians' closets. But as we all know, pain is beauty, and these nasty things really f up your feet. Due to the structure of the high heel, this piece of fashion could be the most harmful to our bodies. Just shoving your size 8s in a sexy size 5 crumpled up like Play-Doh all night? Yeah, that's definitely gonna do it.
And finally, number 1, painted veins. Hey, from one pale human being to another, I have no idea where this came from. I don't get it. I don't see it at all, really. Back in the 1800s, you only had 2 looks to choose from, really. There was painted or natural. See, natural was light on the makeup, as you'd guess by its name, but painted, well, they meant that in a literal sense. This more vibrant look required actual paint, just lead-based paint. And the most important part of applying all this is you can't move or smile. Yeah, any emotion will cause the paint to crack. That's why all these paintings are so serious. 4 more hours? 4 hours? Okay. Madame X, the portrait, the famous portrait, originally painted back in 1884. At first, her straps were slipping off her shoulder, right? A little, right? But that was deemed too scandalous for the upper class society around the painting at that time, so John had to repaint the straps back on. What a joke! He's like, okay, too sexy? Okay, straps are on, there we go, we're fixed. Backlash was still so strong after John had sold the painting because her skin was so pale and you could see her veins. It was like, oh, too much, I can see through you, what the hell? Just no winning back in the 1800s, eh? Can't have spaghetti straps, can't have veins. Wait till Playboy comes out, you guys are gonna shit.
Number 10, the hobble skirt. This is a bad idea written all over it. The hobble skirt, also jokingly called the speed limit skirt, was a dress with a very tight hem, making the poor lass who's wearing its movement, well, not having much of it. Can't have the wife running off from her home now, even if that, that meant the home was not a good place and men acted really bad back then. But no, you can't have her running away. Apparently though, some were so tight that it caused women to fall, and in some extreme cases, I can't believe this, those falls were fatal. What? Number 9, muslin dresses. Honestly, I can see celebrities doing this today. Okay, so the female figure. It's sleek, it's curvy, it's gorgeous. Today a girl's got some options on how she wants to flaunt what her mama gave her. You go, girls. But back then, well, not so much. Except for the muslin dress, apparently, which I find strange at the time, since seeing a woman's ankle could give a guy a stiff neck for hours, if you catch my drift. Essentially, this was a dress that you had to wet first, like a gentle misting, if you will. Yeah, weird, right? And then you'd wear it out. Now, for the summertime, this makes sense, and honestly, I might support this myself, actually. See the curves, stay cool. However, some stories tell us of women who wore this during cooler weather and then got sick. Fashion over function, ladies. Be careful. That's a silly one. Oh, 40 below, I better wear my muslin dress. Yes, I'm just gonna walk out. Number 8, ladies wear. Okay, this is a general one, but ladies' dresses and wear in general was just ridiculous. I mean those big poofy dresses, it just seems like ladies had it rough. When have they not? Wear a dress that's too tight or so big you struggle to walk around. Not to mention the fanciest of dresses have wire or wood cages and frames. Just making walking around more difficult because, yeah, that makes sense. For me, anytime I wear formal wear, I keep an eye out for bathrooms. You never know when you need to go. However, I just can't imagine trying to squeeze the lemon in those bad boys. Whew, that would be difficult. To make matters worse, there are stories of women wearing just regular big poofy dresses and then getting in accidents at factories. And yes, it was gruesome. And yes, they didn't make it out. And no, there's no movies about it. Stop asking. Number 7, pestilence fabrics. Last time I was talking about the Victorian era, I mentioned a few points on fabrics with harmful and dangerous chemicals, which happened more than it should have. It shouldn't happen at all, really. It's kind of sad. Well, that wasn't the only fabric-related issue that was out to get you back then. For example, wealthy people couldn't be bothered to do their own laundry. I hate doing laundry, I don't blame you. I'm not wealthy though. And sometimes would have them washed and taken away by launders who, well, wash clothes of the rest of the city. Being that clothes and washers themselves were poor, or that clothes were just mixed around regardless, well, that was an issue. There was a lot of sickness going around at the time and, well, it was contagious. A lot of times these sicknesses would cling to fabrics and when given back to their customers, well, they could very well come down whatever London was feeling at the time. It doesn't sound like a lot of fun. I think I'll just wear more of my dirty stuff. I'll just wear my underwear for 6 months straight. It was white when I bought it, not anymore, but it's okay. Number 6, lead. Here we go again. Lead, just lead in general. It was used in so much stuff. Seriously, it's scary. Especially because they knew it was harmful. It wasn't a secret, they knew. I was gonna pick one leaded item, but I couldn't. I mean, seriously, I know this is a list about fashion, but it was involved in some clothes making processes, it was in women's makeup, which that's also fashion, and it was in house paint, which I know that's not technically fashion, but it kinda is. Trust me, I used to mix paint before I was an internet comedian. I know the history of paint. Ask me your paint related questions in the comments below. I'm the guy you need to talk to. I mean, it was used in pipes too, and we drank out of those. It's just crazy. Now, it is one of those things that minor exposure to is fine, sure, but the thing was with fashion and beauty is that you probably would use said product every day, like the clothing or the makeup, and especially the makeup of the ladies. Lead poisoning symptoms include headaches, stomach pain, constipation, infertility, and memory loss. Yikes, that's not fun. We don't like that here. Number 5, corsets. Nobody wants a waist bigger than 9 inches, said everybody in Victorian times. I for one can appreciate the female form and the hourglass figure. It's admirable, sure, but that being said, I don't think we need to go so far to keep the female form in shape. The corset's a little too much. Corsets were those chest-tightening, gut-sunking, push-all to mincemeat to the top of the pie apparel that went under every woman's dress or every fat dude in his 50s who wants to feel 29 again. I don't think I have to tell you why this is bad or uncomfortable. The human chest needs to breathe, and when something's that tight around you, well, you struggle to breathe. Trouble breathing, fainting were not all too rare, especially in hot and humid climates. For my generation, you may recall Elizabeth Swann had issue with hers in Pirates of the Caribbean. And then she fell, and then Jack Sparrow caught her, and it was a good movie. But the corsets, I can't get behind them. Number 4, foot binding. While not exclusively done in the Victorian era, it was started in ancient times and continued all the way up until the 20th century, thus includes the Victorian era. A Chinese fashion tradition that takes women's feet and binds them and squeezes them until they begin to change shape. Poor ladies. Again, I don't think I need to tell you that forcibly changing bone and muscle structure in your feet just for fashion is a bad idea. I think you all know that. For starters, it doesn't look right. After years of binding, the shape of the foot drastically changes. Secondly, the health risk of doing such is not worth it. Oftentimes toenails fall off or become infected. Ugh, gross. Bones break and pierce skin. It's a bad time all around. Thank God we stopped doing that, right? Jeez. Oh, thanks. Number 3, lard wigs. Wigs have been around for a long time. If you're a fancy politician from Washington, you wear a powdered wig, singing Yankee Doodle Dandy all the way to the Capitol building. Balding men, women, or really anyone can wear a wig. It's really for everyone. What I'm getting at is it's been around for a long time and we've come a long way. given enough time and asked to tell the difference, I probably couldn't. I really couldn't point out a wig if you showed me. So we're getting really good at it these days. That being said, in the Victorian times, wigs were quite common and were fashioned with a peculiar substance. Lard, yes. Imagine every day of the week without proper baths or showers and living in close proximity to the Thames River. And you take a handful of pig lard and just slather that in your wig to style it. Put a gross sound effect in there, just gross sound, ugh. Do you imagine the smell? This is the most offensive hair crime since frosted tips in the early 2000s. Those were a big mistake too, I gotta say. I had them, but there's only one man who can pull that off. And he's in Flavortown, you know what I'm talking about. Number 2, German helmets. 1914 was the end of the Victorian era and the beginning of the modern era. It's actually a very fascinating time. It's kind of like modern meeting the past. Really cool. Well, fashion just doesn't mean civilian. Anyone who's ever spent time in the Marine Corps knows that they gotta look their best. Wow, Marines. The Empire of Germany was no different in 1914, and a lot of German soldiers wore helmets with an ornamental spike, like a Koopa from Super Mario. I know you guys have seen the movies, you've seen them. Except the main issue here wasn't an overweight Italian plumbers jumping on their heads, but the war and the enemy itself. World War I was fought in a lot of trenches, so it's kind of awkward when you can see a bunch of little spikes moving up and around the enemy's trench. It's also kind of dangerous to have an extra piece on your helmet, as you can get caught in weird places like barbed wire, and yes, if you're wondering, sometimes they were used in the absence of a good melee tool. Yeah, you'd be correct, sometimes they did. You gotta do what you gotta do. Oh, brutal. Number 1, French uniforms. More World War I, but it's still Victorian. It counts, I promise. While the spiked helmets were a very bad idea, they were shortly phased out. They learned their lesson. However, the French stood up and said, no, I have a worse idea. Also, shout out to France. You guys get a bad rap for the war, but it's really your war. You guys rocked it, man. You guys are the best. Love France. Anyway, the French uniforms were a little bit of a mistake. In a classic case of fashion over function, kind of the theme of this list, they wore very bright and blue-red uniforms. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but bright blue doesn't exactly blend into an environment, thus it made French soldiers a very easy target. Everything's like gray, black, and brown, and you're just wearing bright blue and red pants? Yeah, you're not gonna make it far, Chief. Number 10, the cholera belt. This is just so silly to me. While the Victorian era seems like a long time ago, it's really only like 3 to 4 people ago. So yeah, your grandparents or maybe even your great-grandparents could have experienced a life like this. As we all know, disease was rampant back then, and thank God we're a little less gross now, am I right? Well, cholera was quite the tummy bug going around back then, causing upset stomach, indigestion, and the Oregon Trail's favorite, diarrhea. Ooh, no thanks. So the people of Victorian times came up with something that, well, wasn't only functional, but fashionable too. Very nice. The cholera belt was a piece of red fabric that was to be wrapped around the belly to keep you warm. That's because people thought having a cold belly caused cholera. Because yeah, that's what gives you cholera. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's what does it. It's not. It's a sickness. It's a virus. Number 9, Scheele's Arsenic Green. For some reason, green was all the rage back in Victorian times. I'm not sure why. I'm personally not a fan of green, but except for the green screen. We love that. I know you guys can't see that, but I love the green screen. When I was a paint mixer, sometimes people would bring up the wildest colors for me to mix, and they weren't for art projects. They were for walls. So weird, but I digress. There was a common color back then called Scheele's Green. It was made in a lab by a spooky, scary Swedish guy named Scheele. Go figure. This color was used in everything, dresses, fabric, paint, you name it. The trouble is, it was a compound of copper and arsenic. Therefore, it was toxic and caused a lot of harm. It also had links to cancer. For example, when Napoleon was banished to St. Helena, the walls of the house he was staying in were painted with shades of Scheele. Eee, that's not good. Pretty sure he died of stomach cancer too, so there's a connection there. Number 8, beetle dresses. Like I said, the green color was really in at the time, and there were other ways of achieving such a gorgeous glow besides using Scheele paint. Similar to how Cleopatra made her eyeliner, some dresses in Victorian times were made with pieces of beetle. Ugh. I'm sure there are some folks out there who probably don't mind that, but for the rest of us that don't care for Halloween or My Chemical Romance and Tales from the Crypt Keeper, hard pass. Basically any beetle or colorful bug that had wings, or I guess caprices, was worth keeping was prepared and sewn into fabric. The finished product doesn't look like it came from creepy crawlies, it actually looks kind of good, to be honest. Mind you, this is a time when a lot of things were still done by hand, so there's a little bit of love in each beetle you stitch. That's kind of nice. Mom helped out with that one, that was nice. Number 7, wearing black for weeks. Losing a family member is tough. Life can get hard. In Victorian times, passing away was a big deal. There was usually a big funeral, flowers, tears, everything, the whole works. The crazy part is, you were expected to wear black or mourning clothes, as they were called, thought to be an outward expression of one's emotions and feelings. However, it's not like that one funeral of the distant uncle you had, where as soon as you got home, you ripped off your suit and hopped on Call of Duty to see what your friends are doing. Oh, on the contrary, my ninja diffusing friends, because in Victorian times, your search and destroy matches would require you to wear those black mourning clothes for a long time. Sometimes even weeks and months on end. Queen Victoria wore hers for years after her husband passed, and it was odd to see her in anything but black. That's a weird story. That's crazy. Number 6, aniline dye. In 1856, William Henry Perkin was trying to create an anti-malaria drug using aniline. After all, the British were spending an awful lot of time in foreign nations doing as the British do and needed a cure to keep doing what they do. Well, he did not find a cure for malaria, but he did discover it makes a very lovely dye that makes deep reds, purples, and black. You need that for the funerals. Naturally, this picked up a lot of steam and began to be used in everything from socks to shoe polish. Yeah, I know, right? Trouble is, once people got enough exposure to the clothing with aniline dye, their skin would go red, itchy, inflamed, and was known for causing really bad headaches. That's because it would absorb to their skin and poison their blood. That sounds pretty actually, I don't want that. Number 5, zinc chlorine coats. This one's bad, man, but it was stopped before it became a trend, thank God. Picture this, it's Victorian London and you're but a humble city servant. Your job is to clean the streets. One night it begins to rain, as it is known to do in England. I hear it rains there a lot, I don't know. And the city provides these humble men with coats that have a zinc chloride layer in the fabric. It was supposed to protect against rain and wetness and whatnot. A lot of chemistry in this video, but some might already guess that this was a bad idea. Zinc chloride is not only corrosive, but water soluble. So, after a shift in the rain, a lot of these men came back with really nasty chemical burns. And no, they didn't have emergency showers like in Heisenberg's RV. They didn't have that, or your high school chemistry class. It was really bad. They stopped it immediately, because that's really bad. Number 4, asbestos fabrics. Chris will like this, he'll remember these. Picture this, it's 2004. It's Saturday afternoon and your dad just got finished watching an episode of Trucks. Nice. And now you have control over the TV remote. Saturday morning cartoons, here we come. I used to love the Kirby Show, he's one of my favorites. Love that guy. But just before you change the channel, there's a commercial with an old man who looks very concerned. And he says, "Have you been affected by mesothelioma and or because of exposure to asbestos? Then you may be qualified for compensation." I believe it went something like that. Maybe I should call Saul Goodman. Where's he when you need him? All jokes aside, those commercials were not joking. They weren't joking around at all because it's been known asbestos was very harmful for a long time. So yeah, it was pretty bad. Victorian times were no different. Mostly used in things to protect from heat or fire, and while it did do the job somewhat, it was very harmful for the lungs. And like the old man says in the commercial, it could be cancerous, hence mesothelioma. I said it right there. I said it the first time when I was impersonating him, and now I can't say it. Mesothelioma. There it is, mesothelioma. Number 3, radium makeup. Okay, sure. I'll give you that radiation and radioactive materials were pretty much being discovered and barely understood for the time. Okay, sure. It was new. Look up Madame Curie. Tragic story there. So when the very interesting radium was discovered, it got thrown into everything because, yeah, why not? Radium makeup, radium watches, you name it, radium was in it. While at first exposure to radium, you'd be fine, not too much to worry about. However, after years of direct physical contact on the skin, yikes, there's going to be a problem. It's radioactive. It's the reason why you shouldn't get too many X-rays. Not that it's radium, I'm just saying radiation in general is not good for you. Not much to explain in this one except it was used and manufactured in women's makeup and they used it, and I'm sorry, that's just rough. Number 2, Mercury hats. Mercury was nothing new in the medical field in Victorian times. It had been used in ancient China for a long time before that. And yes, it was poisonous. It was harmful too. However, in Victorian times, some hats included mercury in their production process. Now, why is that so bad? Well, because mercury makes you go insane. Hence why they called it Mad Hatter's disease. I could not think of a worse name for a disease. Now, not that it's a fashion point, but this was also readily used for treating syphilis at the time. So something that's readily available for the public and health would wind up in closed production. It makes sense. If there's a lot of it, sure, it makes a lot of sense. But it makes people go crazy. That's... Sorry, who's talking to me? What? No, I'm just kidding. Joke, funny. Number 1, cellulose nitrate. This one's crazy. As you can tell on this list, there's been a lot of clothes and fabrics mixed with some naughty chemicals. Naughty! Of course, this is years before OSHA or WMS, so it probably wouldn't happen today. However, this one takes the cake. When cotton, or a cotton-like product, is introduced to nitric acid, it forms cellulose nitrate, which is also known as flash cotton. Not because it takes its shirt off at an edgy concert, but because I cannot stress this enough how unstable and flammable it really is. Even the slightest heat source could set it off. There's even stories of people spontaneously combusting after being exposed to items made with such. The lights in the studio, they'd probably set it off. That's how sensitive it is. That's pretty crazy. More sensitive than your first day to prom, you know what I'm saying?